Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 96. We're going to talk about Mad at the Moon from 1992. I watched this on Amazon Prime. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can always find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. This film was directed by Martin Donovan, written by Martin Donovan and Richard Pelusi. Now, Martin Donovan began his career acting in Italy before moving into writing in British media and Hollywood. He worked as a director as well, but he worked much more as a writer, and his most well-known work was writing Death Becomes Her, which came out the same year as this film. This is Richard Pelusi's only writing credit. He had a long career as a grip in the camera and electrical departments. The cast includes Mary Stuart Masterson as Jenny Hill, Hart Bochner as Miller Brown, Stephen Blake as James Miller, and Fionnuala Flanagan as Mrs. Hill. Mary Stuart Masterson comes from a family deeply rooted in the entertainment industry, with both her parents being actors. Her film debut was as a child alongside her father, appearing in The Stepford Wives in 1975. Her breakthrough role came in the 1987 film Some Kind of Wonderful, where she played the tomboyish drummer Watts. This performance led to a string of successful roles in the late 80s and 90s. She has since ventured into directing and producing. Hart Bochner began his acting career in the late 70s. His highest profile role was as Harry Ellis in Die Hard from 1988. Bochner has tried his hand at directing as well. Stephen Blake only had 3 credits over 3 years in the early 90s. Fionnuala Flanagan began her award-winning career in theater before transitioning to film and television. She might be most well known for James Joyce's Women in 1985, in which she plays 6 different women who had a profound influence on James Joyce's life. Besides her award-winning performance, she also wrote, adapted, and produced the piece for the stage, and subsequently as a feature film. Good Lord, no, I do not recommend this film. While there are elements to praise, as a general rule, it is slow, pretentious, and most damning of all, boring. This is prime American art house. Feel free to skip this one. So let's cover the synopsis. In a severe black and white shot, 2 boys and a girl silently play on a dry prairie in the American West. We cut to an opera being performed in a tent for frontier settlers. Our heroine, Jenny Hill, lies in bed having dreams. Good? Bad? We have no way of knowing. 10 minutes in, and someone finally speaks a line. Now it feels like a movie. Farmer James Miller comes a-courting on Jenny Hill. Jenny is not interested, even though she's almost an old maid at this point. Jenny sneaks out at night to see local outlaw Miller Brown. Mom is beside herself out of frustration that Jenny is acting so irresponsibly. A local saloon girl passes bad poetry and love notes for Jenny like this is the 5th grade. Miller rebuffs Jenny, even though he clearly has feelings too. Boom! All of a sudden, James and Jenny are married. Miller stands all mysterious near the church and fires a single bullet into the sky. Why? I don't know. Turns out James and Miller are half-brothers. Miller ends up with a prostitute while James and Jenny coldly attempt to consummate their wedding. She lies there thinking of Miller before pushing James off. Now, James is embarrassed and hurt. James really does love her, but he's just so shy and timid. James boards up their farmhouse windows and locks himself out of the house. He's afraid that he's going to hurt Jenny. Under the full moon, James growls and barks, clawing at the farmhouse. Now, Jenny is terrified and hides in the attic. We see James' silhouette against the full moon. It is the single best shot in the film. The next day, Jenny packs up to head home. She's had enough. James is naked, asleep in the front yard. Now, Jenny's mom thinks that she's making this whole story up. To be fair, it does sound pretty far out there. Somehow, the whole town now knows and is very concerned about what James might do next. Not too worried to stop a little girl from following him through town, however. James explains that he gets moonsick. He is so desperate to have Jenny that he's willing to let Miller protect Jenny on the nights of the full moon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I mean. In the end, Miller realizes James's life wasn't all Miller jealously imagined, and James comes out of his shell a little. He shaves his monstrous beard off, which is a good step. And Jenny realizes she does have feelings for James, which, where did that come from? The end. Since there's no werewolf in this movie, there is no transformation scene or makeup job. There's also no werewolf lore. But the only interesting part of this film is the very odd triangle relationship between our 3 main characters, James, Jenny, and Miller, even though there isn't a lot there. James loves Jenny, Jenny is infatuated with Miller, and Miller is jealous of James. These 3 provide the engine that drives the very thin plot. James is a social recluse as a consequence of his mental illness. He loves Jenny, but cannot effectively convey his feelings. He knows Miller is his bastard brother, but doesn't know how to reach out and breach the wall that his father built. Jenny is described as on the edge of becoming an old maid. However, she is very emotionally juvenile. She eats up unrealistic, simplistic love stories. She obsesses over the bad boy who's just not into her. Miller is perhaps the most complex character. He's jealous of the life that he thinks James has had. He knows his childhood was awful. He just assumes James's life was awesome. He knows there's no way a relationship between him and Jenny could work, which sets up the bizarre emotional resolution. Jenny has to accept James's proposal, since she has little other choice since Miller won't accept her. Her physical rejection of James on their wedding night, while it's certainly understandable, James does not appear to be a particularly good lover, triggers his mental illness. This scares Jenny into being willing to blow up the marriage unless she gets what she wants. Now, Miller is willing to cuckold James, which is cruel on both Jenny's part and Miller's. James's willingness to let Jenny find happiness, even at the cost of his own, is ultimately what gets both Jenny and Miller to wake up. Miller realizes James hasn't had it all, and Jenny realizes that James truly cares for her. So, happy ending, I guess? Now, in the synopsis, I mentioned the great shot of James silhouetted by the moon. There is one other brilliant scene. James has been brought before the townsfolk, and his mental affliction has been made public. Everyone is scared, even though they don't need to be. The camera pulls back to emphasize how alone James is, while the lighting changes to further isolate him. James explains what he suffers from and why they shouldn't fear him. It doesn't save the film, but it is good. It also reminded me of a significantly better version of this scene. Fritz Lang was one of the most influential directors of the 20th century. Born in Vienna in 1890, Lang studied architecture and painting before turning to cinema after World War I. He rose to prominence during the Weimar era of German cinema, directing silent classics such as Metropolis in 1927 and M from 1931. Lang's early work was characterized by its visual inventiveness, exploration of the human psyche, and themes of fate and justice. As the Nazi Party came to power in Germany, Lang emigrated to the United States, where he continued his prolific career. The scene I want to talk about comes from M, widely considered one of the greatest films of all time. Set in Berlin, the story revolves around the hunt for a serial killer who's preying on children. The intense police search disrupts the criminal underground, and the city's criminal element decide that they should track down the killer themselves. After all, they have kids too. The film stars Peter Lorre in his breakthrough role as Hans Beckert, the disturbed murderer. Lang's masterful direction creates a tense, paranoid atmosphere, using innovative sound techniques and visual storytelling at the time to explore themes of justice, mob mentality, and the nature of evil. The film's climax, featuring Beckett's capture and trial by the criminal underground, raises complex moral questions about guilt, punishment, and society's treatment of mental illness. And it's this tour de force climax that Mad at the Moon reminded me of. It's a pale comparison, to be sure. All it did was make me want to watch M again and recommend it to you. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing The Wasp Woman from 1959. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.